What's good, y'all? Today we're going to be turning tofu into salmon. Yes, I said it. Some tasty plant-based salmon fillets. Oh my goodness. Let's get into it, y'all. So I have my side of fresh parsnips here. Ooh, they kind of look like carrots, but they smell like licorice. I plan to make this into a mashed parsnip and jalapeno mash thing. Yeah, so I was just smelling it and kind of getting the flavor profiles because it is my first time actually cooking with it on my own. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I'm going to boil these till they get nice and soft and get ready to get mashed. I'm then going to follow along with some butter, heavy cream, and some salt and pepper and allow the mix to get really smooth. This is a very great substitute for mashed potatoes. It tastes very similar to me like sweet potatoes, or very similar to carrots or sweet potatoes. But it was very good. I liked it. And I added the roasted jalapeno just for a nice charred taste, and I'm just gonna end up dicing them when they get nice and black and brown and toasty. I'm just gonna dice them and add them in the mashed parsnip. So yeah. Usually if I'm cooking something for the first time, I like to add a unique component to it, like a spicy or sweet. So this time I'm going to be adding the jalapenos to this. Now let's get into the tofu. So I got the tofu fillets cut. I'm adding some beet juice. This is simply for color, so give it a nice pink color. So any type of canned beet juice, just pour it on top of there. To remember about being plant-based, it's really about imagination and being as creative as you can. I swear the most common question is probably, why do vegans and vegetarians try to mimic the meat or call their products the same as meat products? And it's honestly because starting with something that we're familiar with is always easier, especially for someone who's trying to make the transition. You're more likely to try something that you've tried before as opposed to something completely new. So I'm now making some slits in there to, one, get the flavor inside, the flavor and the coloring inside, as well as for the look of it to really mimic some salmon scales, skinny gills. But yeah, that's what. So now we're gonna prepare our seaweed water. And we're going to take a few seaweed sheets, add it in a bowl, add some water, mix it all up. You can also blend this if you want it more like a seaweed water puree, and you won't get it just won't be as flaky, and it'll be more of a thin consistency. Adding seaweed to dishes adds that very natural sea-like umami. It works great for dishes that you're turning into a fish-like dish or seafood-like dish. It adds a nice sea taste. So I highly advise this for any plant-based dishes that are seafood-like. Oh yeah, just gonna mix that right in until the seaweed sheets soften and it turns into a nice seaweed water mix. This will be part of your overnight marinade, so you're just gonna mix that well in. You do want your tofu salmon to marinate for at least an hour, just to really infuse the seaweed tastes and the spices that we plan to put in there. So yes, I highly advise you to marinate it as long as you can. So I'm just going to add the seaweed mix in there. Prior to that, I added some Epis, which is just the island marinade with the base of onion, parsley, green onion and peppers, thyme, habanero pepper, and basic spices. So I'm just gonna allow the tofu salmon to marinate with the seaweed mix, the Epis mix overnight. And again, you can choose to do it just for a few hours, it's no problem. But the more you allow it to marinate, the more flavor the pieces will have. Now that the flavors have just been absorbing inside the tofu, it's now to prepare for our browning or frying process. Before we brown, we are going to coat each fillet in a spice mix and a lemony mix. So for my spice mix, I added my favorite pantry spices, which is onion pepper, black pepper, salt, paprika, garlic powder, and onion powder, keeping it pretty basic since it's been sitting in a marinade for a while. So yeah, you can grab your favorite spices, mix that all up. As for this mix, it is oil and lemon juice. I'm just mixing that up nice and well. This will be just like a nice outer wet coat for the tofu fillets, so the spice can really stick on. So I'm just going to mix that mix well till it gets pretty thick. As you mix it more and more, you'll see it get a thicker consistency. So just mix it well, mix it more and more as much as you can. And again, this is water, lemon, and oil mix. So now we're going to prepare to coat our tofu pieces. We're going to make sure we have everything in front of us just to make it easier. Now what I did there is basically soften some seaweed sheets to make some mock skin. If you want to be a pro about it, you can like cut it and make it the exact measurements. But me, I just did like a nice little rough cut and put it in the water and allow them to sit on the side for when I'm ready to place them on the tofu fillets. This is if you really want to go the extra mile and make it look like a mock salmon. But if you're not really into that and the fillet's okay, it's totally fine. You can fry it straight like this, but if you want a neater look, then I'd advise you to probably do it this way. I'm going to add the wet mix first on top. And this wet mix, the whole point of it is just to add more moisture to the tofu and more lemon flavor. And then I'm going to add the dry mix on top of that mix and coat that really well. You really want to coat that into the mock gills that we've cut in there and get the flavors all nice in there. So when it fries, it'll really go inside the flavor of the tofu. Because sometimes I found that when I eat tofu, it may be salted very well on the outside, but then when you taste in it, it's very not really much flavor. So really want to get enough spice and seasonings all up in there. Now I'm going to put the seaweed sheets on top of the tofu fillet and get that to look like a nice skin. This is probably the hardest part, but I think after the second one, I kind of got it. So practice makes perfect, y'all. We got this. We just got to practice. I'm going to get that nice wet coat all up in there. That lemony flavors all up in there. And then, and the spices dry. Boop, but it boop that eat out. Yup. Yes. Just like that. Oh, yeah. You really want to rub it in very good. This time I did fry them with regular oil, but I'm very convinced to try baking them. They turned out very well, but I want to see how it would be baked. So yeah, I'm just going to apply the skin. Get that nice on there. I found that frying it though with the skin did give me some issues. So I'd probably fry the skin part on first, if that makes sense. So I got my oil nice and hot. My tofu salmon piece on there. That thing get nice and cooked. Now you can cook it to the color you want. Me, I like my tofu hella crispy. Like, I don't like the inside too flimsy. So honestly, my preference was the browner the better. But some people like their tofu pink. So it's up to you. It's really up to you. What's your preference? And yeah. You can also choose to fry it with butter and some fresh herbs such as thyme and oregano. I honestly only had oil on hand, so I made it work. But I would have added some thyme in there just for some extra nice flavors up in there. But yeah, you can use what you have. You can bake this, you can air fry this, Honestly, you can do this any way you would like, but I just wanted to give you guys some helpful tips on how to turn your tofu into mock salmon pieces. As you can see, I'm struggling. My skin. But yeah, that's probably the most challenging part, just a heads up. But all in all, I'd say this was a very delicious dish. It does take a bit of preparation, but I'd say it's still good. So I got my mashed parsnips on the side. Right there, right there. Yeah. He like it when I do it right there, right there. Put my tofu salmon right where.